Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is The Honest Mechanic. I'm your host, and today this is part 2 of the two-part carburetor cleaning. So this is a ZAMA carburetor. This is a C1Q, and it just comes back out of the ultrasonic cleaner, and as you can tell, nice and clean everywhere. As I mentioned in the prior video, I don't like using any kind of harsh solvents such as carburetor cleaners or any of those things. I just use a ultrasonic cleaner with some mild soap and a little bit of warm water. After that came out of the machine, what I've done is I've lightly used a blowgun and blown through all the orifices everywhere, especially with our high and low. And then down here where all of our passageways for the fuel and the air, of course, where you can get some dirt trapped in there. So if you watched the first video, this is basically a reassembly of the carburetor. So we're just going to go step by step, nice and slow, and hopefully you guys can follow. So what I like to do first is I like to assemble the needle and the rocker. So you're going to take the pin as well as the spring here, and I hope my camera is nicer to me than it was last video and it can focus. But you're going to take your little spring and you're going to insert it right into that cavity right in the center, and you let it sit there. This is kind of a little bit of a trick. Just takes a bit of patience if you've done it. If it's your first time doing it, then you're gonna take your needle and you're gonna set it inside here into the ears, and then kind of hold it this way. And we're just gonna drop it right up in there. And then tuck the pin under the screw head. Now it's also important to make sure that that spring doesn't pop out and seats perfectly. Because if that spring is bound up in any way, it will not operate properly. It's either going to overfuel or underfuel. Either way, you're going to have done this all for nothing. Tighten that down, no sense tightening it too tightly. So as you can see, everything's working as prescribed. Again, I'm going to try and get a little bit closer here. You guys can see everything. So my spring is nicely set in there. You can see it's not bound in any way. So now, the next step I like to do is on these C1Q carburetors, you need to set the height of these to make sure that you're not, again, overfueling or underfueling. Best way to do that is you take your screwdriver, and we're going to run it. I'm going to try and do this again nice and close so you guys can see it. We're going to run it close, and you want that screwdriver to just not touch the end. This one here is right perfect. So we're going to leave it. Next step is we're going to take our diaphragm for the needle. And remember, if you're putting in a carburetor kit, these particular parts are going to be separate. So the first thing, this one here, is stuck together. No sense taking it apart. So as I mentioned in the previous video, we're going to have our spacer, which would be our gasket, facing down. And we're going to line up this little hole here with our air hole over here, or transfer hole. Just like so. The next thing, we're going to install the block over top, the primer block. And then, again, looking to make sure that that little hole lines up over here. Another easier way of these C1Qs is to make sure that these two hoses line up the same way on the same side of the carburetor. Next up is our primer bulb. And by the way guys, I made sure after these parts came out of the ultrasonic cleaner that they were all in good condition. They were all, you know, reusable. If any of these components, for example, any of these diaphragms have any type of holes or tears, do not reinstall them because they won't work. Here we go, we take our primer ball, put that right on top there, then we can cinch it down with the 4 screws. Just like a tire, I like to use a cross method. Again, these don't have to be super tight, just tight enough that nothing leaks. So again, crisscross, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and we're going to flip it around, get to the business side of things here. So first thing, we're going to install our reed valves, as I like to call them, because these little one-way valves here, and here, allow fuel in and out of these 2 holes. So we'll drop that there. We're going to put our gasket on top, lining everything up. Then comes the panel. Another note that I can make for you guys here to make it easier is this particular one has some little divots coming out, and those help line things up. Go. Take our eccentric diaphragm. There's only one way this one goes. Gotta flip it around sometimes. Again, this is the same as inside down here, where we've got our diaphragm that goes down first, and then we've got the gasket on top. It's actually a little bit different, but making sure we put everything back the same way we found it. Oh, almost forgot. Gotta put our dowels, our little spring here. Without that, nothing works. Here we go. Putting that down. Try to make sure everything stays nice and tight. It's like building a sandwich, essentially. There you go. All in layers. Easiest way to do it. Only way to do it, really, without forgetting anything. Putting our screws in. If you guys have any comments or questions, you can message me and I'll see if I can help you out. Alright, so there we go. There's the carburetor all put together, of course minus our high and low. So as you guys remembered, over here, if I can get my camera to zoom again, over here we had them marked. So I'm going to take the low one, again looking at the here we go, come on now. You can see right here we have our L and then our H, and you can see real clearly this time right in here C1Q. So here we go, we're going to put this down and we're going to bottom it out lightly as to not damage the tip. Again, as I mentioned, it's missing its limiter caps, So it's very important that we put this back the way it was, and we don't turn it too many times in one way or another, because it will not run correctly. So there we go, we're bottomed out right there. So we gotta count 3/4. So there's a half, and there's 3/4. Now we're going to do 1 3/4 with the high. And the reason why there's more turns on the high speed, not necessarily because it's more fuel, but this particular screw might be a little bit harder to tell, but the threads on this one are super fine, so it needs more turns to get the same amount of fuel as you would in your high, which also makes it easier to adjust, and very fine adjustments are made much better. Bottom this one out. There we go. 1 3/4. Half. 1, 1 1/2, and then there's our extra 3/4. Or quarter, sorry. So there you have it, guys. This is the carburetor, C1Q from ZAMA. It's very commonly used in the 4-mix engines, and that's how you put it back together. Hope you liked the video, and don't forget to subscribe.